Okay, hello and welcome everyone to the present moment. I am your tea master, your host, your facilitator, your friendly neighborhood Buddhist monk, Bhante Varrapanyo. And this morning here in Italy, and this moment, wherever that moment may be, is an opportunity for us to connect with Buddhism, to connect with meditation, to connect with spirituality, whatever that may mean to you, and especially to concern ourselves with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. This will be a open space where people are able to ask their questions to Bhante Warapano, what I often call me. This will be an opportunity to practice mindful breathing and kind of key into the uh, natural present moment experiencing. So just being embodied, being in the present moment, and opening the heart, opening the mind. And we will also have some tea. So I will prepare some tea and I will not share it with you because it's impossible to do so unless you come to Milan and knock on my door. And we will leave the space open for questions, for sharing, and there may be some points that come up for me that I like to share about. All right, thank you all so much for being here, and we'll go for about an hour and a half, and spend some time together and enrich our spiritual lives. Glad that you're all here.
And I'm in London. It's 9 a.m. here. I feel it's reasonable for me to spend half an hour here, and so I will enjoy having tea with the Sangha. And Auntie, if you become impassioned and speak quite forcefully with certain qualities and attitudes, it's possible that I might experience that as unpleasant, and that's okay. So I don't have to come to these sessions every week, and I really respect the work that you're doing. And this is such a great opportunity for me to develop my meditation practice using your Discord platform. So I hope I've made myself as transparent as I can be. And thank you for letting me be open and honest.
Well, Ayla, Michelle, it's great to have you here. And, people who have their faults or their experiences, that's all of us. And when we are one of the all of us, these people, these beings, these humans that are not enlightened, and we have our what we can call faults or experiences of difficulty, when they are willing and able to concern themselves with the goings on of the Sangha and the teachings of the Buddha and the Buddha, that's wonderful. So my tradition, my teacher's tradition of Tabarwa is really all inclusive. And even for people who have severe mental health issues, people who are really unstable and get into all kinds of things, they are welcome to come and live with our community or of course participate in our community and do all kinds of good deeds and get access to resources that they may need, health resources, Dhamma resources, just food, shelter, all that. So please feel invited to be careful and be mindful and open your heart and deepen your heart, but also know that you are welcome here because you are really a sincere practitioner and you are concerned with doing good deeds and the path. So we're lucky to have you here. And I'm very grateful that you spend your time here.
Thank you for saying that. And I'm sure you and all of us in the Sangha can appreciate that, you know, it's nice for all of us to try our best to be as skillful and as mindful as we can and get a balance between protecting our own psyche and way of being in the world and being there and showing up and being compassionate for others. So, as I said, I think being meetings half an hour and being here for the Sangha and for you, and putting my own needs aside, you know, I think that's my contribution, and I feel it's a fair contribution. And at the same time, I need to take care of myself and protect my psyche, um, my mindfulness, my soul, my spirit. I need to do that as well. And I'm sure you can uh, accept that and respect that. And I hope all of us can learn more and more how to take care of ourselves and others.
Me too. So it looks like we may have a bit of a new face here. Well, maybe two. Evelyn and Meta. Would you like to introduce yourself or share anything? Maybe a question or interesting point to bring up? One of the kind of big points that goes along with an online sangha like this, an online space, is that there are a lot of ways that people will act, people will interact, that they would not act in person, period. Right? They wouldn't even go there or show up to that environment, let alone then go there and, act in a certain way. So, a part of my leadership and management of the community is that I'm very aware of that. And so, I also have to be willing to respond in a way that may be unusual or may be surprising just because of the dynamics of the space, right? Um, so, it's something to keep in mind.
I remember, Christina, it was such a pleasure practicing with you, Christina. Honestly, you have such lovely energy and so sweet. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And to keep in mind that we may have a emotional or psychological or karmic connection with Bhante, right? With the human being under the robe, right? But and that's great. Of course, I'm primarily a human being. I'm primarily a person who wants to have happiness and not to suffer so much and to help others, right? For sure. And under the robe, I wasn't born without clothes. Surprise, surprise. But another thing to keep in mind that is, especially in the framework that we're working with right now, and also moving forward in terms of spirituality and Buddhism, etc., is that the robe that I wear and the robes that monks wear do not represent themselves, do not represent themselves as a master or a teacher, an enlightened person. They represent the Buddha. The robe that we are wearing is the Buddha's robe. So when we go to a gathering with a monk, or when we join, these live streams or something like that, recollect the Buddha, recollect enlightenment, right? Recollect the source nature and be with that and dwell in that. This is what all the Buddha statues represent, all that imagery and that iconography. It's to bring you into that place of direct recognition of your Buddha nature and that remembering. And so also, my presentation and my being here is not so that you can be my student or that I can say, smart things or something like that, but it's to recollect, it's to remember. And when I put myself in this public position, which is very enjoyable, it's very lovely to be in community and to to be in this position to share and facilitate with everyone. I love it a lot. But also, I get to be in the position of remembering what this robe means and what it represents. Not remembering myself or, this idea of a monk, but remembering my Buddha nature, remembering the Buddha's enlightenment, remembering awakening. And that is a remembering that is very possible to just dwell in. We've already
Okay, so can
arrived.
I respond to that,
We've
please?
already met it where it is.
You often speak about my teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but the reason why Thich Nhat Hanh is the most successful Zen master in recent history is because of his way of being. So it's not your robe or your role or your position or your job or your status that makes one recollect. It's your tone of voice, the words that you use, the way you're moving your body and your head and your facial expressions, and the way that you think is made evident to the world in the things that you say. And the way that you feel is made evident to the world in the things that you say and the things that you do. So the reason why Thai was so successful was because his way of being, sitting, speaking, walking, eating, every single moment, every single part of his being, all the parts, not just one part, all the parts of his being were an expression of Buddha nature, and 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 that expression of Buddha's nature was transmitted through him into the world for people, for beings to witness, experience. And it was a transmission of Buddha nature through his being into the world for other peoples to receive and experience. So as I've said to you many times, Bhante, it doesn't matter what you say or what you wear or what job you do. Your tone of voice, the words you use, and the movements you make are the real teaching, the real transmission. And I hope that's clear because, I think I have said this maybe 2 or 3 times
Well,
now.
we can also call this grasping at appearances. We can also call this delusion. So it is making use of a non self fixated and a non personalized and a non judgmental direct experience of reality. So we disenchant ourselves from the identity or ego of Thich Nhat Hanh, and we disenchant ourselves from the image of the robe as being a status symbol or a form. Rather, It is a pointer. It is a representing enlightenment. And we don't put our power to recognize freedom, we don't put our power to be mindful in Thich Nhat Hanh, in the Buddha. We put it in our own capacity to remember. And that is what Thich Nhat Hanh represents. That is what the Buddha represents, your capacity to become enlightened. You are not an enlightened person, for sure. So if you grasp onto the perceptions and the appearances that you come across, you will be in a state of delusion. You will be in a state of grasping and attachment. The more that we can be aware of our preferences, of our views, of our opinions, of our judgments, the more we can detach from them, the more that we can
Okay,
put them down.
agreed. So the more I can be aware of what is, the more I can differentiate between frequencies, tones, feelings, ideas, the more clearly and accurately I can identify, recognize, and differentiate between what is kindness,
No,
what
that's not
is
correct.
compassion,
It's not
what
correct.
is wisdom.
Only
So I need to be able to have some capacity, some awareness to know what I am experiencing.
only as much as you can detach. That is how much you can understand. That is why of course, there's some truth, there's some good point to what you say. The more aware we are, the more we can look closely at things. But in fact, it's missing a fundamental point, because the more aware we are of different colors and chakras and vibrations and facial movements and all these kinds of things, well, we can go on two sides of the spectrum. One is if we grasp onto these appearances, we will be in a state of delusion. We will, in fact, enter a state of psychosis quite quickly. Whereas if we can become more and more aware of, especially within ourselves, going around and looking and deciding about people is not really what we're meant to do as Buddhists. We're meant to practice generosity. We're meant to cultivate our own virtue inside of ourselves. So you'll often see great monks, enlightened masters of the past, not Thich Nhat Hanh, but where their eyes will be
So,
gazing down and
so then
protecting
you would
their.
be practicing generosity towards the human beings that you
So Ayla,
encounter,
dear
that
Ayla,
you
Michelle,
experience, and
it's
that you come into contact with. You would be, you would be having generosity towards them. If you were a Buddhist, you would be
so
having generosity. You would be
Michelle,
expressing
it's important,
generosity towards the people that you come into contact with. I
dear.
agree with that.
Yeah.
That's the point I was trying to make.
Well, dear Michelle, please be mindful of the space and the context. So when we have a Buddhist monk who is leading a group and hosting a session, it will be very disturbing and inappropriate, or it can be, to interrupt that person while they're speaking. Right. So I would request, if you do not do that as much as you're able to. I know we have some latency issues. Sometimes it's difficult to stay on track, but if we can be more mindful of that, and I also will try to not interrupt you when you're speaking as much as I'm able. But we
Okay,
should
that's
we should
lovely. And if
yeah,
you could
grasp the
not
context.
shout at me or shout at the Sangha, I would really love that you could give the Sangha some respect and some love. That's all I'm asking.
Well, I'm not quite at the point where I'm comfortable with shouting. It's certainly an aspiration of mine to offer the great shout of wisdom and compassion. But especially because we are an inclusive and diversive group, and a lot of people here have dealt with trauma in the past. I don't emphasize that way of teaching or that way of sharing, but I do have a soft spot for it in my heart. It can be very beautiful. Many of my experiences in the Zen tradition I've gotten the opportunity to be shouted at and things like that, or hit with a stick. But I don't have a stick, and I don't raise my voice very much. I can't remember the last time I shouted. So anyway, the important point is that the more that we become aware of things, that's wonderful. And whether it's inside or outside, that's fine. But as much as we grasp onto the appearances that we become aware of, we will become delusional. We will become very confused, off base. Rather than doing that, the more that we are able to become aware of nama rupa, that is name and form, or mental formations and physical formations inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves, and we are able to be mindful of them, aware of them, and detach from them, that is how we will develop wisdom. That is how we will really know about the faculties and the nature of other people, not by kind of monitoring them or their facial expressions or their subtle movements or something like that. Human beings are just human beings. We shouldn't look for perfection or idealism in them. And if we are more mindful, if we are more present in each moment, then our way of being will reflect that. But if you give too much importance to your perceptions or your views, then you may be grasping onto ignorance rather than clear seeing. You may be feeding ignorance and attachment rather than cultivating and abiding in mindfulness and detachment. And really, in spiritual circles and communities that emphasize a teacher, which is really most of them, just like if you want to be a carpenter or you want to be a salesperson or you want to ski, there, hopefully, fingers crossed, you can find a teacher and they'll work with you directly. But in these contexts and in these circles, most of the time we're not looking towards people other than the teacher. We're giving that responsibility or that burden onto the teacher to say, oh, you did a good job in building that shed. This is up to snuff. Or your mind seems to be well regulated. You seem to be making some progress. If every person in the group is trying to, judge each other and judge each other's practice and make comments about each other's practice, it would be very confusing for everyone. So learning how to tune into that context of the situation, and that it's always changing, and we're a very open community here. I'm not the master of the group or doing formal teacher student training here, but there is a context of a facilitator, of a guide, of a representative of the Buddhist Sangha and the teaching. So we, as much as we can respect that, it'll be a very good tool that we can use. And I thank you for your inspiration about the case, Michelle.
Uh, can I say something?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know if I understood Michelle right, but I see you, Bante, you are the way you are an inspiration. and you might need to have that kind of charismatic person to get people to get interested in these questions. And I understand that you don't, you shouldn't um, think so much about the person, more about the the way. But it's I think you have to have that kind of person to get people interested. Do you understand?
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wanted to point out is that that I do have a quality about me, right? I like to laugh. I like to present in an eccentric way at times. You know, I'm creative. I like these things. I'm a human being. So the
Yes.
fact that there's that connection, there's not a problem with that. You know, that's wonderful. And
Oh,
we're inviting people in and we may feel close to Bhante or to our teacher or what have you, right? But that the
yes.
other element that maybe we don't emphasize enough is the what the robe represents, right?
Mm.
What the monk represents. And so even if I was not a monk, and I don't know, I'm not I don't think I'm going to live eternally. So, you know, when my body decomposes, I don't think there will be a robe on there. But even if I was not a monk, I would still be emphasizing this. You know, that when we see monks, when we see Buddhist temples, we don't have to get lost in the like the interpersonal or the personal understanding, like is that the best temple, do they compost, is this monk the
Mm.
right monk, you know, they use money. We don't have to get caught in all that because the expression that they are sharing with us by devoting their lives to this path is remembering the Buddha, remembering awakening, remembering the path. And in that case we can go to a Buddhist temple that's not ideal. We can attend a Dharma gathering or a Sangha gathering where it's not completely perfect or suitable for us, and we can be inspired to practice. We can remember, you know, and that those two things go together when someone is in the monk role. You know, I rely on both of those things. I understand some people like me a lot and love me a lot, and they don't care if I'm a monk or not because they're, you know, they don't come from that background. And some people um, see the robe and they know what the robe represents, and they want to support, really, even though it's funny to think about that, but they want to support me to be in that robe. If I'm not in that robe, they won't be so involved. Um, so
Oh,
those two things can go together quite well, and it can keep us from getting lost in the personal idea and the positives and negatives that go along with that. You know,
yes.
and also like when we come to a space like this, that because it has that monastic expression, we can just enter into the space and practice, and we can know that that's what the robe represents rather than, you know, some class or some extensive teaching, you know, some progressive development. It's just show up and be here, you know, and settle in that and have faith in the Buddha.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Christina. You are 100% correct on that. Yeah, it's very wise of you to see that there's no self without a self. You cannot have a no self without a self. So if the self has to be there, then what is that self? What are the qualities of that self? And also, I've got to go to work now, but something about practicing what you preach. You know, I think Ty was extremely unusual in that he he was actually the thing that he was preaching. And that's so rare in this world, in the mindfulness world. You know, thousands of mindfulness teachers, including myself in this, are any of them mindful? Can we count on two hands? I will count. Look at my two hands of those thousands. In two hands, maybe we can count how many are actually mindful. So Yeah, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, and have a nice day, everyone, and a good weekend. And I'm so lucky to have a secure platform in which to consolidate my silent sitting meditation practice.
Thank you so much,
So,
Michelle.
best wishes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's quite important that we have people from all different backgrounds and elements that step forward in all kinds of different ways, because otherwise we may get a little bit too complacent. We kind of get into this foggy zone of practice because we feel more peaceful, because we feel relaxed, and we don't want to stagnate. We want this to be a pond or a body of water that has a lot of movement, a lot of freshness to it, and knows how to deal with all kinds of different issues and situations that come up, no matter how complex they are. Because that is the direction of the Buddha. That is the Buddha's capacity. And the bodhisattvas, there's a lot of different aspects that we can use here. But we have to feel that, like, oh, we're not just here to relax and kind of feel good and be, Buddhist. We're here to solve problems. And the more that we realize how interpenetrating our self is, the more broad the problems that can be solved become. And it's exciting work, and it's joyful work to solve problems and to dig wells and to build shelters for single mothers and orphans in Myanmar. And we will have a lot of barriers and difficulties that come up as we take that responsibility to be a more robust and integrated and interpenetrative sangha. And it's going to take a lot more trust and people speaking out and exposing themselves, so that we can know who we're with, and we can know the great capacity that the practice gives us and gives those people who speak out to forgive, to refresh, to restart, and our own ability to do that as well. And just those experiences, it builds more and more trust that we can work together, that we can collaborate together, that even if someone is difficult to work with, and I'm not talking about Michelle in particular, there's a lot of people that are difficult to work with, and that we can still offer them protection. We can still offer them support, and not on our own, but as a community, right? As a robust, interpenetrating community, as a sangha. Hello there, Shelley B. Nice to see you. And the monastic form, when followed properly, it really gives us a powerful tool for building these communities. Because the monastic is not a business person, right? So the monastic is not trying to accumulate wealth for themselves. The monastic is also not a family person. So they're not taking wives and building families and things like that. So they give us this core, or this pillar in which to use for building community that takes a lot of the pressure off of social engagement, right? So a good monastic is an ideal redistributor of resources according to ability and needs, or an ideal person to manage social work. And there are a lot of great monastics out there, and I'm getting there. I'm still very young, so I'm developing, but I can see that in myself, those qualities of the unnecessariness of this drive to accumulate wealth, to be a business person or what have you, to have a car and to have all these different things. And because we don't know about that so much in the West, it's going to give us quite a creative and dynamic environment in which to build community, in which to do social work, in which to fundraise, in which to develop a nonprofit, in which to build, single mothers and orphanage home in Myanmar, or to develop our meditation center in southern Italy, my teacher's meditation center in southern Italy. Okay, we have a question coming in from Dear Memory Gray, one of our quite devoted Sangha members. Would you please give some teaching about cultivating forgiveness, trust, and friendship when grieving past trauma and or betrayal? You may need to share a little bit more information, be a little bit more specific, as much as you're comfortable to do. A major point, though, while you're maybe coming up with a little bit more information, a major point is that you and I are not someone in particular, in the same way that a tree is not. It's unspeakably true. It's so robustly true, robustly and abundantly true, that a tree, does not have separation in it. A tree is not a separate self-entity. A tree is everything. So the point here is, you and I are not someone, but we can apply this as well to those who have betrayed us, those who have harmed us. We can recognize that they are not a solid self-entity, that their actions or their way was cause and effect, that in a sense, the you is free from that and the them is free from that. It was causes and conditions. And we also understand that why do suffering people cause suffering? Because they are suffering. Simple, cause and effect, right? And Memory Gray adds some extra information. Repeated attempts to trust others resulted in being used, humiliated, or abused. I think a lot of us, I'm sure a lot of women, more women than men, have probably gone through that. We open the umbrella and we stand under it. And we know that that umbrella is strong and stable and full of love, full of peace, full of safety. And as time goes by and we devote ourselves and we immerse ourselves more fully in that, this path of doing good deeds with mindfulness and detachment, and it does take time, right? There's not a hurry about it. It does take time, especially for some of the deeper conflicts and the deeper traumas to alleviate themselves, right? It takes time. But as we hold that umbrella of protection, cooperation, communication, nonviolent communication, as we hold that umbrella that is encrusted with the triple gem of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, as we learn and recognize that the Buddha was a real person, that this is a real deal, okay? our faith and our stability and our trust in that umbrella that we must hold until we get to the other shore um, will bear a lot of fruit. And then we consume those fruits and we continue and we hold that umbrella. It's not that there won't be rain. It's not that there won't be thunder and lightning. It's not that there won't be hail. But the difference is that now we have our umbrella. And as we take time and as we stay consistent, we will, this confidence about that we have our umbrella will become unshakable. It will become brilliant. It will become luminous. It will brighten. It will widen. It will become expansive. And we won't be confused or have doubt about our capacity to heal and forgive and begin again and see our true nature in this moment and in other moments, some which are very joyous. That's also a time to see our true nature. It's not a time to get lost in happiness or things going well. And then also in those times of dire straits, when those situations do come up, when we make mistakes or others make mistakes and we become in a state of affliction, of ignorance and attachment, we remember, I have my umbrella. I don't need to think this through. I don't need to solve this problem. I just need to release and have faith and continue. Okay, Memory Gray, I hope that was helpful. And it all does come down to learning to trust ourselves and learning to forgive ourselves. And the more that we practice the path, follow the Buddhist teachings, doing good deeds, mindfulness and detachment, dana, sila, samadhi, panya, the more that we do that, the more trust and faith we will have in ourselves, the more forgiveness we will have for ourselves. And that will expand outward naturally. It will expand outward to those who have wronged us, and it will even expand outward to those that we love and those that have helped us. We will forgive them. We will release them. And how do we release? It's just like, how do we breathe? Breathing happens all the time. Healing happens all the time. It's not a matter of time. It's a matter of mindfulness, or mindfulness and detachment, awareness and freedom, awareness and non-stuckness. And actually, to get to a point, because there's always that Garuda bird in the distance, right? We're kind of waiting for that meteor to hit the earth or this great disaster to happen. And these great disasters do happen. So we will avoid and prevent disasters by the cultivation of blessings. We will avoid and diminish and protect against disasters by making donations, by doing actions of generosity, by following precepts, by practicing meditation, by concerning ourselves with insight, developing wisdom, and listening to those who have developed wisdom. That's for sure. But the brighter side of the coin, let's say, is that in the recollection of the possibility of disaster, there is an entry point to the recognition of true nature, the recognition of direct experiencing, the recognition of no birth, no death, the place in which disaster cannot reach you, the place in which disaster never arises and never departs. So that kind of worrisome mind, which can be very problematic if it is combined with blessings and combined with being informed by wisdom, can actually support us to detach from this story-based version of our lives, this past, future, self, other narrative. And then in the kind of recognition of the possibility of calamity, what do we experience in this moment of direct experience? We feel and we know gratefulness. We know peace. We know luminosity. We know the brilliance of things being the way that they are right now. The great gift, the treasure store.
I have a question, Bhante.
Okay, yeah.
How much tea do you have? It seems like you're pouring a lot, and I'm just wondering how much did you make?
Is that a koan? Is this a Zen test? Are you testing my resolve?
This is just me being curious. When you started this voice chat, I also saw you pouring tea, and I'm wondering if there's like multiple what are they called? Now I forgot the thing that you pour tea out of. Do you have multiple of those things or just one?
Well, if you come to the center in southern Italy, which I will be at and taking care of for the next few months, I will give you a very deep and robust lesson on the art of gongcha, the art of Chinese tea. But a brief instruction is that we use a clay teapot, something like this, a clay teapot. And depending on the kind of tea that you use, you can get many cycles out of that tea. So this is called a shu pour, and it is a compacted and fermented, kind of like a black tea, but it's not black tea. And you can use it again and again and again, maybe even 10 times in the pot. And this is I don't know the Chinese name, but it's a fairness pitcher. So if I have some guests here or in southern Italy, wherever I may go, I can be fair and I can distribute the tea from the teapot into one of these 2 cups, and more cups if necessary. Are you satisfied?
Yeah, I had one more curiosity because some time has passed and I'm thinking the tea must be cold by now.
No, this is a fresh boiled water. So it's quite hot. Maybe should be too hot to drink.
Oh, thank you. That clears up for me. Usually when I make tea, I don't even drink half of it, so I will have a cup of cold tea and then I'll drink it like a couple hours later.
Thank you for sharing that.
Hi, Bhante.
Yes.
I have a question. I think the last time I talked was ages ago, but I still find everything quite overwhelming, learning about Buddhism. But is it all right to not want to become enlightened? Is it? I just want to be happy, and I am quite happy with what I'm doing with volunteering and just trying to do good deeds and meditate. And I just feel like even with this Discord server, I don't feel like I got anything to contribute because I've just got such a simple life, and I don't feel like I have all the problems that everyone else has. So it's hard to know how to contribute. Um, I'm sure everyone else just wants to be happy too. I find it very simple just to meditate and do good deeds, and that's all you really need to know. What was my question? Do I need to become enlightened? Do I have to?
You are enlightened, and you need to start to understand that and start to process that. And
I do feel like I'm in a bit of a bubble. Sorry.
well, you have that responsibility to understand your Buddha nature. In a sense, we can say that we are all enlightened. And we can also put that into a place that's less controversial or less exciting, of saying that we are already impermanent. You know, it's like this. It's a very interesting statistic, but it's I'm going to talk to ChatGPT about this actually, because I want to know more about this. But we have a feeling in our mind that, yeah, of course, we'll die, I'll die, everybody will die. We recognize that, but for the 99.99999% surety, we will be alive in a few minutes from now, right? And this is biological, this is evolutionarily, because otherwise people would just be losing their minds, isn't it? So we have this notion of this 99.99999% likelihood of our continued living and breathing and the body being in a certain way, right? Well, what's the reality? The reality is that you were already born. You are already born, and now you're alive. So what other possibility is there? There's only one thing that hasn't been checked off yet, and that's death. And does death wait? Does death give you a ticket at the stoplight and say, hey, slow down? Does death, require you to do something for it to come along and see you? No. So beginning to recognize our impermanence, beginning to recognize our true nature, beginning to recognize the profundity of the sensitivity of everything right now is the process of getting involved with the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and mindfulness and doing good deeds. And what you may need to emphasize more is the detachment aspect. You are practicing generosity, so you will already have a quality of detachment. But once we start to really enter that way of relationship with generosity, and that's when a sense of detachment, or the development of detachment, can actually be practiced, right? And so what is detachment in this sense? It means that we are not trapped by what arises. We are not trapped by this false 99.99, etc. percentage of the continued health or life or whatever of this body, right? So that tomorrow is empty, and 5 minutes from now is empty. And to start working with that, it brings up our vulnerability, and it brings up our our sense of not being fully in control. And that's where the practice really starts to open up. That's where the joy starts to open up. That's where the forgiveness starts to open up. That's where the insight begins to open up.
Oh, there's no doubt that my life has changed. I mean, I'm still the same person. I'm still doing what I do, but I do feel like I'm in a bit of a bubble. I don't feel superior to anybody else. No way.
Well, you need to
I,
listen to people who are superior to you. It's just like with arm wrestling. Let's think of ourselves as arm wrestlers. A little bit more simple. You know what arm wrestling is, right? You've seen that. Okay. So if you like arm wrestling, so if you like enlightenment, or you like peace, or you like spiritual strength to be able to deal with suffering and help others deal with suffering, right? Then if you are going around arm wrestling people at the local elementary school, arm wrestling children, you're probably not going to get much stronger, and you're going to be a little bit silly, and you're going to waste a lot of energy, right? So we have to find and connect with people and incorporate them into our lives that are stronger than us, that have more wisdom than us, that have more insight than us. We take refuge in them. We listen to their Dharma talks. And listening, I recommend listening over reading. Reading is more for kind of research or academic study. Listening is more along the lines of practice. So, recently in the announcements channel, I've shared quite a few Dharma talks from some of the main masters that I'm following right now and being informed by right now. Master Yung Hua, Master Lumpal or LP from Wat Ram Bodhi Dham in Thailand, whose translator is Sasi. So he speaks Thai, but the translator speaks very good English. And of course, Te Thich Nhat Hanh, and there's also my teacher, Sayadaw Otamasara, which I'm working on collecting some of his talks and publishing them soon on our YouTube channel. But that's what we do. And then when we have the time or the space, we're not researching these people because we can't understand them actually. Even, there's Buddhism, we say, well, there's not much of a self there anyway, like a solid self. So we lay down or we get into the bathtub or whatever's comfortable for you, and we practice to listen, to open up our ears and to listen deeply and be with the Dhamma. And that's trust and faith, and also deep listening, non-judgmental, non-complicated listening. And this will deepen our practice and our perspective very quickly. It will inform us about how to move forward in the subtlest of ways, not in the ways of, okay, go here and do this and do that and get to this place. No, it informs our subconscious on how to start processing those things that we don't have an intellectual capacity to process. And it's not intellectual, it is insightful. It's a matter of our wisdom. It's a matter of our intuition. And so when we listen to these masters, when we listen to these teachers, they feed our intuition. And then our intuition takes care. Our Buddha nature, our enlightenment nature takes care of the rest. And we deepen our relationship with that true nature. So that's the homework that I can give to you at this time. Announcements channel, and scroll up and find those talks, and just lay down and listen to them. Okay. Anything else?
I suppose I need, and it will help me with to gain more wisdom and power to explain what I'm doing to other people. It is hard because some people I've talked to, they feel like I've just, it's a fad, or it's just come out of the blue.
We have to understand it. We have to understand it in a way that is really direct for us. So it's like arm wrestling. Now, you're not interested in arm wrestling, are you? Do you want to be an arm wrestler? No. I love arm wrestling. I really like arm wrestling is my favorite sport. You know, it's kind of a subtle and a refined martial art. It's not WWE, it's a real thing. And so you can empathize with that, right? You can imagine someone likes arm wrestling. So the concreteness of physical strength and skill and all of that goes into arm wrestling, it goes directly over into spirituality. Only we're more able to confuse ourselves when it comes to spirituality. But in the same way that it would be uncomprehendable to like be confused about the strength difference between you and skill difference between the number one arm wrestler in the world, and you've got to see these people. I mean, they're incredible. And there's not, you would never doubt that. You would never have any doubt, right? So when it comes to as much as you're able, when it comes to Thich Nhat Hanh, or when it comes to, some of the other teachers that I recommend, at least from my side, you don't need any doubt. They will not lead you the wrong way. Now, you may find that that it's not exactly your flavor, so maybe you don't take that one a lot. Maybe Thich Nhat Hanh is your style. Maybe LP, maybe Master Yung Hua. There's something you pick up, and then even if on the YouTube algorithm, it'll start recommending you different teachers that you may be more aligned with. And we're taught, at least I feel I was taught in the West and in America, to not really use my gut, to not really use my intellect, but kind of use my thinking mind, my intellectual mind. And we have to learn how to subdue that and calm that down, because your gut and your intuition, they have the answers. The intellect is just like it has the answers to movies, or it can do tricks, or it can present itself in a particular way. But when it comes to healing, dealing with trauma, forgiveness, more integral work, and dealing and affecting the subconscious, right? It's all about our gut and our intuition. And once we feel that connection to it, we just listen and we go on faith. That's it.
Thank you.
I have something to share,
Great.
if you
Go
can hear
ahead.
me.
Yeah, you sound good.
What I've been dealing with this week is I've been being accused of being too detached or not in touch with my feelings, or I'm not dealing with things. I lost my mother on Monday.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, she went non-responsive pretty quickly. And even though she had a DNR, the hospital ignored it and put her on life support. And I made the decision, because it's what she wanted, to take her off of life support. And I didn't hesitate on that decision. And since that time, I have been, focusing on closing out the accounts and just the general stuff of everyday life, since I'm the executor of the estate. And so everybody keeps telling me that, oh, I'm not showing my emotion, or I'm avoiding it. But the thing is, and I'm not even, my aunt is handling the funeral, and I don't even care about the funeral. That's for them because it's important to them. What I can't seem to get across to people is my mother died when she went unresponsive. The body was just a vessel. I have no attachment to it. I mean, obviously, I want her, her remains to be treated with respect. But other than that, I mean, life goes on. And I don't mean to sound cold with that, but, my mother is a part of my genetics. My mother is still a part of me. That part of her will never be gone. The things that she taught me, the lessons that she taught me, and I carry on my life with that. So no, I'm not somebody who is going to cry or show big signs of mourning or grief on that, because as I said, it's the physical aspect of my mother is gone. The things that she taught me, the things that are a part of my life, are always with me. And I just can't seem to get that across to people.
Yeah. So the simple answer is we need to become more comfortable with the reality that most people do not know much. Most people do not have much insight. Now, everyone has insight. Everyone has certain skills. And I'm not talking about this in terms of like ableism. I'm not talking about that people have different positions or perspectives, but more so that many people will not have a capacity to understand your experience. And that maybe actually does have a root in ableism, right? That we have this clinging to an idea about other people or certain people being able to understand our experience. And if they don't, that they're somehow lesser, more or less. And I'm trying to work more deeply with the isms, the speciesism, the racism, ableism, sexism, ageism, etc. Um, but once we become more comfortable with that practice of not relying on or expecting or holding other people to this standard of understanding our experience, right? Then we can release our fixation on trying to explain things to people according to what we understand. And when we do that, we will release other people from that fixation on trying to, and it will take time for them, but when you embody it, they will reduce that, they will calm down, helping other people to stop that fixation on trying to make us understand things that they understand, right? And it transitions into a place of more deep listening. And then when you do have the position like you have, you have the responsibility as a helper. Two things: when we go on this path, when we go up these steps, let's say the steps to heaven, or as a Buddhist we would say these steps to awakening, and awakening is the step. We have more responsibility on one hand to detach so that we don't get stuck in these kinds of situations. And we also cannot go backwards. So we have to stop this like fixation on getting back to where we used to be, right? Being in a way of being according to how we used to be, because we can't go back to that. We can only move forward. I've actually seen like one teacher, they gave a disclaimer, like they were doing an introduction to the path class, and they said, hey, look, once you start to get involved with this, you're not going to be able to turn back. And for a lot of people, they need to be wary of that disclaimer, because they may need to stay in that habit energy or that realm according to their environment and causes and conditions to maintain their stability. So the direction and the guidance from me here is to be more gentle and forgiving with those people, and understand that they're trying to process their own loss. And in terms of your experience, don't try to explain yourself, right? Try to listen deeply, and from that place of listening deeply, offer your compassion. Offer your love. Offer the beautiful life that your mother lived and how precious she is to you, and recognize that even though your justifications seem to be very correct. I mean, I think a lot of people would agree with you on that way that you went about things, but also that what you did and what we do as human beings is not perfect, and it doesn't need to be perfect. So we don't need to overly focus on justifying ourselves or proving ourselves or explaining ourselves. We just need to move forward. Okay, and a lot of love and blessings to your dear mother. She raised a wonderful son, so thank you to her.
It's interesting that you brought up the ism, because one of the components in this, now I'm like you, I'm American, but I'm Hawaiian,
Oh,
native Hawaiian.
hmm.
So I have a very specific culture. And one thing that a lot of my friends don't get, and I will say in this context, my Western friends, as as a Polynesian, as a native Hawaiian, we have specific rituals on how we deal with these things that are closed, as in for the family, for people of the blood, people of the land, meaning native Hawaiians. And I understand that a lot of them are trying to be well meaning, but what I'm trying to get them to understand is it's like I do understand you're trying to be helpful. I understand your point of view, but what I need you to respect is this is a cultural thing. That is the way that my people deal with things, and I need you to respect those boundaries.
Beautiful. Yeah, and that's definitely a way that we can, I would say, be that feeling of trying to explain to them, replace that or transition that to a generosity, so that it's not about them understanding it, and it's not about you explaining the reality of the situation, but more that you are expressing your generosity, you're sharing with them about the situation, right? And in that way, you also convey that, like, uninvolvement from their side is supportive, but don't try to explain that. It's just the action of generosity to share about the situation from your experience.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's, I guess, and I guess it's hard for some people to understand. I mean, death is universal. We all experience it. But I think some people forget that cultures and societies have evolved their own rituals and practices around it, and it's harder for people to understand that. And like I understand, I they want to be inclusive or included, but by their and they're taking offense that I'm not including them. But at the same time, it's but this is a closed practice to my people. And I'm not trying to exclude you on purpose. I appreciate your feelings. I appreciate your trying to be there for me. But this, like I said, this is a closed practice that needs to be respected.
And just be gentle, with them, because they may not have such a deep culture or robust culture that they're familiar with, that they're connected to. So in explaining that dimension, they, it may shake them up a little bit. So be gentle in sharing that with them. And that brings another point, right? Like culturalism. We hold, oh, this culture is inherently better than another culture, when actually it's just another culture.
Exactly. It's, I'm not saying their culture is better, my culture is better. It's just that this is a deeply personal thing that my culture and how we deal with it and our practices are closed.
Yeah.
And it's not better than anybody else's. It's not worse than it's how we do it. And my mother was a very traditional Hawaiian woman, and out of respect for her, I am abiding. I mean, I don't even necessarily believe in all of my people's traditions, but out of respect for my mother, I am abiding by those traditions.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
Welcome in CGG and Chess and Adil. If you'd like to ask any questions or share anything, please feel welcome.
From a Buddhist standpoint, how do you deal with insecurity?
By doing more good deeds. If we don't have a lot of blessings, then we will be insecure. We will be on shaky ground. It's kind of like we'll be inherently an unlucky person. And we cultivate blessings by doing good deeds. We cultivate blessings by doing actions of generosity. And we began to be able to do that by prioritizing that phrase, right? Those words, doing good deeds, doing actions of generosity. And we will exhaust our blessings by prioritizing pleasurable experiences, right? Like prioritizing these releases. Oh, I need a vacation. Oh, I need to smoke, or I need to drink, or I need to go out to the bar. I need to let my hair down. Of course, you can do it, and in certain times it will be helpful, especially if it's not related to intoxicating yourself, and if it doesn't, cause any harm to anyone else or yourself. Then it's okay. We can do that, but we will exhaust our blessings, and we will find ourselves to be fumbling around. So usually people are trying to use their blessings. They're trying to like open up the gift, right? They're prioritizing that. And from the Buddhist perspective, we aren't prioritizing to open up the gift. We're prioritizing to give the gift. And in that giving of the gift, we are releasing attachment. We are releasing desire and fear. And we are cultivating blessings. We are cultivating release. We are cultivating the good effects from good deeds. And we do it in whatever way is accessible to us. So for a young person, maybe a 14-year-old boy, well, it means clean your room. It means take out the trash. It means help out your mama or your papa, right? It means clean the toilet, doing nice things, doing kind things, doing generous things. And we have to become a child again, or recognize that we are a child in terms of spirituality, in terms of that side of our development, but before we can grow and become strong and healthy and robust and do these like integral ways of doing good deeds, facilitating or giving a Dharma talk, or solving people's problems in terms of their mind, or making sure that people have access to basic resources. Now, that's not about higher or lower. It's not about better or worse. It's just about practicality. And so in some of the self-help communities for young men, there's like a tendency there's like a tendency to start giving advice to people or start trying to answer people's questions. But really, we have to start by being uninvolved with interpersonal relationships with other people, right? And start by just doing actions of generosity. And then our merit will grow, and our capacity to do good will develop and expand, so that there will be more avenues for doing good deeds and cultivating blessings.
Well, Bhante, I do have another question for you.
Yeah.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on, especially in the West, people that may have grown up evangelical or whatever sect of Christianity, and they had a bad experience with it, right? They had issues with it, and then they leave, and then they come and like just deep dive into Buddhism or what other Eastern religion. And a lot of sometimes what I see is like, well, it's not Christianity. It's not Christianity. Where I'm going with this is, do you feel sometimes that maybe they should spend a little time decoupling and unraveling the issues with their old religion before they just like deep dive into a new one?
I think that's true. But it's also a matter of like getting involved. And if we really want to know about something, we have to get involved with it. And getting involved in this sense is about getting involved in terms of doing good deeds, being mindful, and detachment. And until we take those steps, like until we do get involved, we really won't know about it. Right. And so the best thing we can do for those people is to give them a simple and safe and not overly exciting way to get involved. Because that way to get involved is essentially the only way that people actually know about it. And if you care about these people, if you're concerned about these people and helping them, right, then you also need to get more involved so that you can speak from a place of experience, and that also so that you can invite them to be there with you, right, and learn with you and have an experience with you. You know, we're Americans, so that buying and selling mentality and that mentality of like the advertising system and either just believing in things or just not believing in anything, it's not very experiential, right? It's more like uh, it's more like a fantasy. It's a fantasy of a life rather than this embodied and engaged experiential life of cause and effect. So we have to put ourselves in the immersive experience of cause and effect to get a better sense of uh, what it looks like and what it feels like to experience cause and effect moment by moment, and then believe in it. And then we don't get other people involved by trying to get them or make them believe in it or discouraging them from believing in it, but we give them a road, we give them an access point to experience, to have a direct experience as much as they're interested. And we may be surprised how little people are interested in things that may bring them benefit. You know, and that's people's karma. That's their life. We can't control them. You know, we can't force anything. The moment we try to force things, everything falls apart. So learning how to do without force, learning how to do unintentionally, and for me that relates a lot to doing as a generosity or doing with mindfulness, just being mindful, just being generous, just putting things down and not really, you know, focused on who's putting them down or who's picking them up. Just put it down. And then we invite those who seem to be interested to experience that with us. And if they are not able or willing or really interested to experience that, be more careful about spending too much time talking about it with them, because they'll get more into the weeds and you'll get more into the weeds. Right? It's like,
I know one thing.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
No, please.
So
please.
one thing that I've noticed is, especially with just the history of religion in general, is when they come, they have the pre-notion, oh, Buddhism has always been about peace, but really most religions that has been their message, and they're just really shocked because they'll know about their religion's violent past, and just they're like in complete and utter shock when they find, well, yeah, Buddhists are people too, and there are sects of Buddhism in its own history that has been quite violent, and they're just completely caught off guard, like mind blown at that.
Yeah, I mean there certainly will be some details in what you're saying that maybe are like have to do with your personal preference, right? And like a feeling of frustration about their wrong perceptions, right? But
Right, and that's what I guess what I'm saying is, it's like Well, yeah, I guess it's anything, right? It's like you have to get over your own delusion, your own preconceived notion of what Buddhism is. But when, like, you really have to be open-minded to learn not just the message of Buddhism, but I suppose like even the history.
And to
And
have an
we're
experience.
human beings, and even Buddhists have done some pretty terrible things in the past. It's part of being human, and in any movement, being a religion, a philosophy, can go to extremes
For
sometimes.
sure, for sure. So, not to be idealistic, right? And it's a very important point, but also to rely on direct experience. Try before you buy. And so when people come and sometimes we have to try a lot. I've got a certain karma with my feet where I don't know if it's the size and the shape of my feet, or that I have thin skin on my feet, or I'm a pretty heavy person. I've got a bit of weight to me. So the shoes that I wear, unless it's only very few shoes, because mostly I wear like flip flops. Usually monks don't wear tennis shoes, especially in Asia. So the shoes that I wear, they just cut my feet. They destroy my feet, and it's really difficult. I just here at the temple, they bought me a pair of nice sandals because the shoes that I just bought were cutting my feet, and those also started to cut my feet. So we have to, like, we really have to try. We really have to have an experience before we know about something, and that includes a lot of trial and error. But especially when people approach us, or when people want to talk about something with us, especially if it's concerned with Buddhism, but with anything, we invite them and we point them to, what is your direct experience related to this topic? What experiences have you had? And so rather than initially getting lost in like the differences between their views and the reality, because you have more experience, right? Rather than immediately getting caught up in that, you check in and you ask them and you invite them, what is your experience about that? And then in finding out that they don't really have any direct experience with that, or in some cases are even unwilling to have a direct experience with it, and they've already bought into their notion, you will prevent a lot of wasted energy on both sides, and you'll also be inviting them to look more deeply, right? So you'll be meeting both needs at that time.
Right. I know personally one of the historical figures, and as far as a person, I mean, obviously the Buddha was a person, but I mean, as a very flawed person, is one of the historical figures I love to point them to study is the Emperor Ashoka, because I mean, what awoke in him to Buddhism or changed his ways, but just that horrific war that he waged
Mm,
against that entire other kingdom. And then
mm,
when he went and saw the carnage, he was like, what have I done? This
right.
is this is not a way to be, which led him to embrace Buddhism and then promote it within his empire.
And the lesson in that our failures, our mistakes, no matter how grave they may be, no matter how robustly mistaken they may be, right, are these opportunities to change and to learn and to grow and to help other people, period. That's why learning
Yeah,
to forgive ourselves and learning to forgive other people is so important, because we want to open the space for helping, for changing, and not in any way being stagnant, regardless of who we were and what we've done and the mistakes that we made, and how horrible we are, which I don't think is really a good way of thinking anyway. But even if that feeling in that sense does come up, and that you feel that it's true, oh, how horrible, how negative, that is the impetus for helping other people. That is the impetus, the invitation for deep healing, for deep transformation, for deep change. And in that way, mistakes are very precious. and negative people are very valuable, or people who have are dealing with negativity in their lives and not able to process it fully right now.
Well, I mean, I've learned in my life a long time ago, even the most negative or hostile people are valuable teachers because they can teach you how not to be.
Yeah. They show us parts of ourselves that maybe we otherwise don't want to see. Would anyone else like to ask a question or share anything? All right. So a few announcements or points of interest, points of inquiry, points of information. I am currently in Milan. A very wonderful Buddhist temple here has been hosting me for the past few days, and I've been resting and nourishing myself from the journey. And within the next week, I'll be arriving at our southern Italy Tabarwa Center in Cinque Grande, and I'll be there for a few months. The space is open for people to come and volunteer and practice meditation with me, and learn about our community, Tabarwa, and also more about our monk life meditation community. Hopefully, a few people will be there. There is very likely, I'll give more updates on this once I arrive, but there is very likely not a robust heating. So a part of the, I'll have to see when I get there, but from what I'm hearing, a part of the fundraising that we've been doing, I'm sure everyone has seen the announcements and the PayPal link for fundraising for our center in southern Italy. A part of that we may be able to direct towards creating or bringing about a more robust heating source. And so we'll see when I get down there. And the other major point and really wonderful invitation is this July, starting on July 20th, I believe, me and my teacher, Sierra Otamasara, and many people from the Tabarwa group worldwide, especially monks and nuns from Myanmar, will be spending 3 months in Bodh Gaya, India, which is the essential holy place for Buddhist people. So Buddhist pilgrims from Myanmar, from Thailand, from Sri Lanka, from China, from Tibet, from all over the world come there to sit and practice under the Bodhi tree. And there is an open invitation to our community and to anyone who may come across me, this happening online. You are invited to come and join us in Bodh Gaya, India. I recently got my approval for the visa. It only took 3 days, and it was only $40 for a 1-year visa for India. It's very easy and simple to fill out. So please feel invited and welcomed. I'd love to see you in India for any period of time. Our group, Tabarwa, is not a traditional, it is a monastic tradition, and in many ways it's very connected to traditional Theravada Buddhism in Myanmar and in Southeast Asia, but it is explicitly not a traditional organization in terms of like Western Dharma groups, Western meditation groups. So you don't need to fill out an application. There's certainly no retreat fee. There's no, it's a dynamic retreat. It's a dynamic happening that you will be stepping into, whether that's in our center in southern Italy or joining us in India. So The invitation is there and open, and I'm here to be as transparent and accessible with myself, as hopefully more than anything else, but also with the community. So if you have any questions, any points of concern, please reach out to me directly, and I will do my best to share my heart, my mind, and my experience with you as much as I'm able. Okay? Sounds good for everyone? Yeah? So let's finish with taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. You can also just listen. This isn't like a magic ceremony, it's just an expression of Buddhism and paying homage to the Buddha. So you're welcome to join your palms together with me in a meditative way. And it's really an expression of sincerity. We're not worshiping the Buddha. We're certainly not worshiping Bhante, but just bringing our heart mind together with our hands. It's a beautiful expression. And we'll do this chanting. You can follow along if you have the ability, but otherwise you can just listen. And we'll finish with this, okay? Find your breathing, find your body, find your heart. Bring the mind to the body, everything together, everything. Like a tree that is inseparable from the soil, the rain, the sky, the sun, this body and mind inseparable from, and everything, right in this moment. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami. Dhammam saranam gacchami. Sangham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi buddham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi sangham saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi buddham saranam gacchami. Tadiyampi dhammam saranam gacchami. Tadiyampi sangam saranam gacchami. Sadhu. 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 Deep bow to all of our participants, practitioners, Sangha members here in the present moment, and also watching later, watching the recording. You are with us, we are with you, and thank you everyone for being here. Be well.